Good evening and welcome to The Point, the last show of 2020. This evening we'll be delving into the economic achievements. 2020 has been a very, very trying year. Suffice it to say, COVID-19 has put the world's economy to a very, very tough test. How has Egypt survived that test? What have we achieved in 2020? And more importantly, 2021, what is the outlook from an economic perspective? With us this evening is Dr. Tamer, Rady, who is the chairman of the Faculty of Commerce at Ain Shams University. A pleasure to have you with us.
Pleased to be here.
It's been a very, very trying year.
Yes, it is.
And lots of countries, usually we used to use the term geopolitical map, and I find it quite extraordinary that now we will change the geopolitical to a geo-economic map. How, before we go into Egypt, maybe I'd like to ask you, how do you see the economic map of the world shaping in 2021, after what we've seen in 2022, the hardships? Some of the strongest economies have and are still suffering, the problems with the European bloc, the Brexit, COVID-19, I mean, so many, a lot of natural disasters. I mean, all this, how do you see the balance of power economically?
Well, 2020 has been by far one of the hardest years in economic history.
Yes.
When you want to compare that, you want to compare it to something that seems very close to it, the Great Depression of the 1930s. So that's how severe that was. Economic powers have seen, their power stripped from them, have seen some real hard times. Economies that were hoping to grow after the financial crisis have slipped into some real deep depression that have never been witnessed again. Unemployment numbers in the United States, unprecedented. In Europe, unprecedented. And so many countries in Africa, the Middle East, the Arab world, all the way up to China, India, have been devastated economically. So by far it has been one of the worst economic years in the history of economics so far as compared to the Great Depression. The impact, of course, varies. Some did worse than others, but in general, if you look at Western Europe, it has been all in the negative territories. When you look over to China, of course, has been devastated, a little bit of positive, but compared to what it was before, for China, big devastation. India, very hard hit. Everywhere you look around in the world, it has been one crisis after the other. Problems and problems and problems, and I think the world is really looking for a change, for 2020 to be over, 2021 to come with hopefully some new hope.
Egypt, 2020 has been a trying year. We've had quite tough times with lockdowns. We've had a very, very aggressive and ambitious plan by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi economically. And how do you see this plan going? I mean, there were times when we had to slow down a bit, but he's back cracking the whip again so that we sort of catch what we've lost. How has Egypt survived, in your point of view, the 2020 downfalls?
We have to go back to 2013, 2014, the beginning of the real fixation of the economy. Okay. Floating up the currency, opening up again, reducing subsidies, then building up foreign reserves.
Yes.
At those days, we have witnessed some increase in tourism as well, right before the Russian plane incident in the Red Sea. But those economic policies of that period have saved us so much in what we are facing today. It has been the cushion that we have fell on.
Yes.
Now, also, an amazing performance of the government in both fiscal and monetary policies, in magnitude and in timing to combat COVID. Remember, COVID knocked at our doors around March, when it became very imminent that it's going to come in. And by mid-March, the government took some serious actions, incredibly serious, to the point that Central bank went ahead and decreased the interest rate by 3%, and throughout the few months afterwards, it reached all the way up to 4%. Tax cuts here and there, tax reliefs, loans, extended and time periods in which people don't have to pay for 6 months or so. If it weren't for all of this combined, and for the continuation of the mega projects that President have set, those massive spendings have made us very lucky when it comes to COVID. In that neighborhood, we were not really affected as horrible as the rest of the world.
Before we dig further into our discussion, we'll take a look at the following report, which gives us a kind of a brief sum up of 2020 in a nutshell, and then we'll continue our discussion with our distinguished guest.
Egyptian authorities have managed well the COVID-19 pandemic and the related disruption to economic activity. This, according to the International Monetary Fund, or IMF's executive board, which added that the proactive measures taken to address health and social needs and those to support the sectors most directly affected by the crisis have helped mitigate the economic and human impact. The growth slowdown has so far been less severe than expected, with the country expected to be among the few countries with a positive growth rate this year, while continued strong policy implementation will further strengthen resilience and help maintain investor confidence. Egypt is labeled as the owner of the second largest economic growth rate in the world in 2020, with a growth rate of 3.6%.
Welcome back. How do you see GDP generally speaking? I mean, we've been through hard times, there's still a lot of deficit, but it seems we're moving up. When we talk about reserves, we talk about GDP, the number, even when we talk about employment rate, at the time quite critical, we still see a slight shift upwards in those indicators.
Yes, indeed, we do. As when you compare us to the rest of the world, this is really a very positive achievement over here. When it comes to GDP growth rates, you know, I would like to always point out to a benchmark that we can refer to, 2011, 2012. Here is a nation that was the majority of the months in 2011, 2012 under curfew, with a very mixed view towards what the future is going to look like. Investment was at its worst during those days, and yet miraculously, Egypt grew at those days 1.8 to 2%. So here is a baseline. When COVID hit later on, 2020 March, and then Egypt went under curfew again. The Egyptian public kind of said, well, we've been there, you know, we've done that, we've been there before. So kind of the baseline wasn't all that bad, and you picked on that. Coupled with the fiscal and monetary policies that were very reasonable, and the relief that the government have extended, of course, our growth rate hit 3.5%, despite all what the IMF and the World Bank have predicted for Egypt. This has been miraculous, very good. The outlook for the future on the three big credit ranking agencies for Egypt is a positive outlook.
And we've had an elevation in our ranking.
Continuously throughout this hard time.
Yes.
Which is incredibly positive as well. We were very lucky.
Why do you think it's not, I mean, partially it's luck, but it's also certain policies.
Absolutely.
What made Egypt survive this crisis?
Well, if you look at the timeline, March, government prepared for chaos, prepared for a pandemic to hit, started fearing. There's a whole lot of guesswork, and there is a whole lot at this time of, well, how much of a lockdown should we lock down? The rest of the world, some countries locked up all the way, and we did not follow that path. We did lock down, but not to that extent of some other countries. That was one thing. So that was a very good judgment call. The second part is monetary policy. An incredible fast response, very unusual from the central bank, that facilitated in life for investors, for people that are in debt, for small and medium industries, for a whole lot of sectors in Egypt to kind of fend off that attack of the pandemic. Another part is the increase in pensions. Remember, that was right early in April, right after it hit. Government decided, increased it by 14% for the budget of 2021. Similarly, allocated one of the biggest budgets in its history for this financial year.
Worth
So massive
noting, the
government
Egyptian fiscal year starts in July,
Right.
because it's not in December, because so that people will understand. So it's right there in the middle of the crisis.
Right
This
in the
is
middle
when-
of the crisis. Very fast response indeed.
Yes. Investment. How do you see investment, the investment portfolio going into Egypt? The president today had a meeting with top-level government officials of the economic portfolio, including the central bank governor. And one of the things he was adamant on stressing and re-stressing on is the increase in investment, the increase in production. He was talking about the need to increase local production. I'm here quoting in English, if I may, an alternative production to imported goods. He wants to reduce imports, increase production, thus increase exports. How do you see us moving in that direction?
All right. The idea of increasing investment at this time is always appealing. It has been for the last several years. For every developing nation, foreign direct investment is a survival tool.
Yes.
Now again, we have a reference point. When you look at 2007 and 2006, a little bit of economic reform and opening up increased the inflows of foreign direct investment dramatically during those years. So then you know what the ability of the Egyptian economy is. You can achieve a great deal when you follow up the proper economic policies. Sure enough, we have done that again in 2014 and 2015, 2016, laying out the grounds for facilitating the movement of investment, freeing up the exchange rates, which is always a very essential need for foreign direct investment to estimate what they are going to do in the future in here. That being said, you have also been building an investing in the infrastructure in Egypt massively. 5,000 kilometers of new roads. When you look at electricity, electricity have more than doubled in Egypt now with an excess capacity so that industry can feel free to start working again. Put all of those together and put the COVID aside and look at the long run. In the long run, we are confident, IMF is confident, World Bank is confident. Foreign direct investment is going to increase in the next few years rapidly.
Industry. How do you see the development of our industrial sector in 2020? Again, taking into account that there were times when we had to slow down production, so to speak. How do you see us moving in that sector? Because as I was saying, the president was really hammering on the need to develop our industrial sector.
Industry, of course, have witnessed prior to the COVID crisis an increase in industrial manufacturing activities and output. When COVID hit, that reached almost 10% of the total industrial output, anywhere between 8 to 10%, depending on the sector. Some sectors were hard hit as much as 20%.
Yes.
Those take time to recover. Now, one good thing that has been incredibly to our side in here is the massive government spending, in particular in construction. So you will find all the manufacturing activities related to construction has been thriving. And I agree, one of the best things to focus on as well at this very time period is local investment. So the government has to pay complete attention to not just foreign direct, but also local. Local will always remain to be a key in hard times.
Another issue will be infrastructure. We've had a new administrative capital, lots of roads, lots of infrastructure, be it electricity, be it energy projects. How do you see us developing on that front?
Well, okay, that has been the subject of a great deal of controversy. When people say, well, is it really time for a new capital? And the answer is, indeed it is.
Why? Because indeed, some people are thinking the money should be better used elsewhere.
Well, then, we can prove them wrong. The idea is, back in 2007, 2008, 2009, I remember a BBC report saying, well, Egypt, you can only take one business appointment a day in Cairo. You cannot achieve 2 business appointments because you can move around.
Yes.
That's how crowded the city is. The one very goal of urban and regional development is to build new cities. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. There is one way in which you say, we are going to extend to businesses the idea of having free land, go there and build. We might even do some transportation to that new area, and then we would let it build up throughout the years. We have experienced this with some new cities on East Cairo. All right? But how many years did it take to develop? 20 years till they became crowded? And then there is the other one. The government, with its mighty powers, come and say, we are going to build a new capital right in this spot. And right in this spot, we are going to put the presidential new palace, we are going to put the new parliament house, and most of the ministries are going to be over there, and the embassies are going to move. Now, here is the deal. Doing that right away increased the value of the land.
Okay.
And when you put the political will into moving the ministries, you have built a community which is already surrounded by other new cities that were not full, yet they're still empty. And you put the size of that new area about the size of Singapore. And in the middle of that, you are planning a business area that looks like any developed high-rises business sector all over the developed world. All of those combined, what did they do? Well, they have made every constructor in this city incredibly busy. And that was the only source of income at times in which local investment was so scared to get involved in plans of their own. That's what the government have done. So then you have achieved several goals. You are shifting all this hardship of living in Cairo to a new city that thrives. You are taking the population with you, shorter periods rather than a longer period, and you are achieving all of this while not really spending on it, because the value of the land itself, a land out in the desert that overnight, because of the political will of the government, took value.
Yes.
So then you are able to spend on it. So the government is not misallocating resources. In fact, it is a brilliant idea. Similar ideas happened in the Suez Canal. Taking all the money out that was not used, people opening up accounts. So the same idea is applying over here. It is a great point in Egyptian history. And what we would like to see is the completion of this project next year.
With us on the line is Mr. Amr Saleh, former advisor to the IMF. Mr. Amr, can you hear us?
Yeah, this is Dr. Amr Saleh.
Dr. Amr Saleh. Sir, how do you see the Egyptian economic performance in 2020 and prospects for 2021?
Well, I'm not going to give you my opinion regarding the Egyptian economy. I'm going to give you what the World Bank and what the IMF have said. You remember that in 2012 we had a dramatic rate of growth of 1.8. In 2019, and before the COVID-19, we had an impressive rate of growth of 6.2%. And you remember that the World Bank and IMF at the beginning in 2013, they were very pessimistic, and they were not really optimistic about the future of the Egyptian economy. But years later, when we increased our Federal Reserve, the foreign reserve, from $11 billion to a ceiling of $47 billion, when we have decreased the unemployment rates from 14% to 7%. We reached an impressive rate of growth of 6.5%. And the IMF have said, the World Bank have said that we are the unique country. We're going to be the unique country in 2020 in the MENA region that is going to make a positive rate of growth. Those things have made from the Egyptian reforms a lesson learned, an experience, and a model that have really impressed the financial institutions, the IMF and the World Bank, and even you remember that Fitch, Standard & Poor, and Moody's, those big financial institutions have given a B plus for the Egyptian economy, which is a stable perspective. And no one was really thinking that such an economy with more than 100 million of people, with more than 1 million people, new entry people to the market every year, which means that you need to create only 1 million jobs, you need to create more than 1 million jobs. Nobody thought that a country with such load would be able to reach such economic performance.
For 2021, what further cooperation can we expect from the IMF?
Remember that in 2012, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
that the country was trying to get a loan of 2.3 billion, and there were negotiations for 16 months. And this was the first time that we had such long and difficult negotiation with the World Bank to get such a very small loan. And at the end of the day, we couldn't get the loan simply because the IMF, the World Bank have said that there is no political stability and we don't see any economic performance for the Egyptian economy. Now we have a very solid cooperation with the international donors. We got the $12 billion loan. This is a loan that is revised yearly, periodically. The World Bank and the IMF and the financial institutions are reviewing, revising the performance of the Egyptian economy. And according to this review and according to these provisions, will continue to help with finance, to support, and giving technical assistance to the Egyptian economy. We have got an additional technical assistance from the World Bank and from the IMF. So what I expect is that the IMF and the World Bank will continue their cooperation, especially in the area of technical assistance to the country due to the success the country has made during the last years.
Dr. Amr Saleh, thank you very much. Salah, thank you very much for joining us this evening on To The Point. Thank you for your fruitful input. Prospects for 2021. One thing for sure, COVID is continuing.
Well, yes, COVID would remain for a while, but it's probably not like the Spanish flu. We are in a better position now. We have 4 vaccines that are out in the market. The logistics of getting those to the developed nations are still going to take much longer time. It's here to stay. It's going to be with us for a while, but governments hopefully have learned how to deal with it. The first time was a massive guessing work. Second time, now governments know what they are doing, know exactly, hopefully, how much to close down versus how much to suffer from the infections. Secondly, maybe we can really have a relief back in Europe and then all the way to the rest of the developing nations because of those vaccines. That would be the one right at the end of the tunnel. So when it comes to the pandemic itself, it is there, but hopefully it would be in its way out. And then when it comes to the economy, hopefully it will be on its way up.
Where do you see our prospects are? Is it in industry? Is it in tourism? Is it energy exportation? I mean, where do you see the prospects? If you were to advise, this is the edge, continue on that edge or develop that edge in 2021. It's a quick winner, let's put it that way.
Well, okay. Well, I have to answer all of the above because, you know, what we call a sustainable balanced growth. A balanced growth is a balance of all sectors. Industry is the baseline to make any developed nation. To transfer any nation from its status to a higher one, you have to focus on industry. That we have been doing by investing in infrastructure, facilitating, investing more in industries, and facilitating the road for local investors as well. Very important, incredibly important at this particular time. To send all the signals to local investors, it is time to reinvest, get back to work now. We have achieved so many different things. Believe it or not, information and communication technology came up a winner because of COVID. 40% increase in total output of ICT in Egypt because of the lockdown. So then,
can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Because you raised a very, very important issue, which is the use of technology, that we use the internet, so to speak. And one of the issues that the president was stressing on in his meeting today was, for example, the electronic payment system in governments, that he wants the governments to be able to get people to develop a system so that I'm at home or in my office and I can conduct all government paperwork, including the payment, that the government can collect its payments online. How is our technology advancing in that? Because COVID-19 shed light on the need to be able to do everything online.
That was one of the positive outcomes of COVID, actually. Government agencies have found ways to make it easier for people to pay from home, to lessen the interaction by human beings to each other, and here the demand for solutions or e-government solutions have increased. But remember, Egypt have been on that path prior to 2010. E-government concept and the advancement on e-government has started all the way from 2004, but it expanded by folds throughout the last year, which is a very positive thing to happen. Today the bank, also the central bank, I think today announced more measures in order, or to extend the measures in order to facilitate the less use of paper money, more use of e-payments and so on. So
we'll delve into the measurements that the central bank is sort of laid out certain rules or extended certain regulations to ease the use of the credit system. Right after we take this phone call, one of the critical issues that President Abdel Fattah Sisi faced when he came to office, which is the elimination of slums in different parts of Egypt. And a very, very aggressive campaign has been taking place. Relocation of a lot of people, and quite an expensive campaign, we might add. With us on the phone is Dr. Marwa Ahmed, Director at the Slums Development Fund. Dr. Marwa, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening. 2020 has seen the removal of a lot of slums. Can you just give us in a nutshell what percentage has been removed in 2020, and 2021, what's the direction for that?
Okay. First, I need to mention about that we have two main types of informal settlement. We have unsafe area, which we call slums, as you mentioned, and this area is about 1% of the urban areas of the city, all Egyptian cities.
Okay.
And we are working to finalize this area by the end of this year, according to the order of the President of Sisi, as you know, and it's almost done.
Unsafe slums, this project is almost finished.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry?
I cannot hear you.
I said the 1%, the unsafe 100% is almost done for this year.
Yes, 1% of the unsafe area is 1% of the urban areas of the city.
Yes.
The other type of informal is the unplanned. It's about 37% of the area of the cities.
Yes.
And we have a plan to complete this area by 2030 because it needs more than 300 billion pounds to complete it. And now the government this year allocated about 10 billion Egyptian pounds to complete these phases. As you know, we work on a phases. For the 2021, we have another vision. It's a new vision for development. We have a new study with UN Habitat to have a new classification for the unplanned and to prepare a plan how to develop this area according to the citywide approach. This approach will help us to look to the opportunities and the risk of urban areas and use these classifications to have a new to develop the city, all the city, not only focus on the slums or the unplanned. So we use the citywide approach and use the opportunity of all urban areas and invest in this area. This vision will help the government to decrease the budget of development and sorry.
Dr. Marwa?
Hello?
Yes. Can you tell us how much was spent so far on the removal of those slums?
Sorry?
How much was spent so far?
Okay. For the unsafe area, the budget is around 39 billion. For the unsafe area, it's as I said, it's almost done.
Yes.
For the unplanned, we need more than 300 billion.
Okay.
So our plan to develop this area on phases on 10 years until 2030.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Marwa Ahmed. Thank you very much and best of luck in your endeavors. Unfortunately, we have only a couple of minutes left and maybe I don't want to go into the credit issue, but I find in that short time it's more important to delve into the challenges because I would definitely say the 300 billion still needed to eradicate the slums or the haphazard residential areas is definitely one of the challenges. What else would you see as a challenge in 2021?
The biggest challenge in 2021, of course, is to reestablish the economic reform policies and continue with the goals set for the Egypt's Vision 2030.
Yes.
That would be the number one target and goal. Amid what is going to happen next, wave number 2, dealing with the repercussions of COVID and awaiting for the world to recover. We are part of the world. We were not going to grow as fast if the world is not doing very well. So believe it or not, you know, we are waiting for Europe and America to recover as well, so that inflow of tourists and FDI continues to Egypt. So the biggest challenge would be how to cope with what's going on in the world and keep our 2030 outlook and all the mega projects we are to keep them on time.
We have a lot of economic tools or a lot of tools in that economic reform process. Part of those tools that cannot be ignored is the informal sector. How can we attract the informal sector to be part and parcel of the system to make sure that they benefit and the Egyptian economy benefits in return?
Well, you know, something as simple as increasing the activities of the e-government. You know, if everybody has to pay everybody using bank accounts and wire transfers, then some of that informal sector appears up. Informal sector takes time. You know, it's a double-edged sword, because if you want to include them right away, right now, well, you know, economic activity might shrink in the short term. So what you want to do is to devise a plan that is more of a long-run plan. You are making it more visible, more attractive, with economic incentives for people operating outside of the formal sector to belong to the formal sector, saying that they don't have to pay as much taxes, they don't have to suffer a whole lot, and the facilities that they are going to gain from doing that would be very appealing for them, that they want to join. So then a system of economic incentives to pull them in rather than force them in is more advised.
We thank you very much, Dr. Tamer Rady, Chairman of the Faculty of Commerce at Ain Shams University. Thank you very much, and wish you a very, very happy New Year. May the new year bring lots of health and prosperity in its tidings, and we underline the word health.